Okay, so you're ready to practice. If you've made it so far through all these videos, all 20 of them so far, then you basically, if you've watched them all, and I do suggest you do, then it should give you a really good basic introduction to the guitar and the theory and the things that are happening with the guitar, the abstract theory concepts, some of the basics we touched upon, to get you to the point now that you're practicing. We had talked about just about most of the real basic fundamentals that you need to understand. And at this point, you're ready to do some practice. Now, when we start talking about doing practice, there's a couple things to take into consideration. The first thing about practice is you basically want to really understand your fundamentals. All the things that I talked about in the videos up to this point, that at least once a month you should go through them. Things like your scales, your modes, the concepts we talked about, your intervals. I mean, all the concepts we talked about that you should go through them. The different chords, the different triads, the different forms of chords, and go through them once a month. Set a little bit of time aside to go through them, to refresh yourself with them, because you may not use them all the time, but it's good to keep yourself refreshed, that you have them fresh in your mind for use. After that, other types of practice that I do, I mean, there's lots of practice that you can do on different types of applications, depending on what type of genre you're playing, what type of form of music you're playing, and everybody eventually will get themselves a little bag of licks, more than likely, for improvising and for when you're composing, and you will have a set amount, a little small library of licks that you want to go over and practice on a regular basis. Probably at least once or twice a week, going through them and practicing them until you play them very fluently. And other than that, a practice can be a lot of you working on things that you want to work on, whether that be your improvising, and we've talked about the improvising, working about how you're improvising, how you're moving around the fretboard, and just practicing. A lot of practice, moving around, experimenting, using the licks that you like, forming yourself some type of lick library that are go-to licks that you use moving around inside of scales and inside of keys and things like that for when you're composing and improvising. There's also the point of you practicing songs of other people. That's a whole other different type of practice, but it's fairly obvious that if you're working on some other people's kind of music and playing other people's music for the most part, or a lot of, that you need to spend a lot of time practicing that. So we talked about basic form, and we talked about holding your pick and working on your own technique and style, and how that can be, it's really hard to teach you that. It's a lot of you practicing how you do it, and so that you are comfortable with the way you do it, and that is more than likely going to change and develop over time. So the biggest thing to address there in practice is to just keep practicing, keep working on it, keep working on it, and keep working on it as much as you can, so that as you get better, that your technique and style and the way you hold the guitar and your form, the types of licks you're practicing, the types of scales you gravitate towards, the types of licks and runs and genres or whatever, that's going to evolve with you. I mean, it most definitely is going to change as you change and get better. And we talked a lot about that. So one of the biggest things that I can relate to you as far as practice is that it's basically in your ballpark. You have to force yourself to practice. And other than that, there's a couple of things that you really need to take into consideration. When I'm recording somebody or myself, the three biggest, I should just say, the biggest things that I've ran into is that you're in time. So use a metronome, is that it's clear and accurate, so that it's a good performance. Don't play it sloppy fast. Play it slow well until you can play it fast well and up to tempo. And that's a huge thing. And play and practice things that are within your means. get good and better at them. And then stretch a little bit. Stretch into things that are a little bit uncomfortable, that you aren't performing really well, and practice those things that you're running into or you are reaching for. And that's a huge concept. So, and I think one of the biggest things that I've come into with people when we talk about practice is to be as best you can as you progress, really be focused on what you're trying to do, what type of music you're trying to play, what type of melodies, what type of licks and runs, I mean, what are you trying to do? And so that you can be practicing things that are going to be very pertinent and important to really what you want to do. Don't worry so much about, well, today I kind of like Rocky blues, but I'm not that sure. I kind of like this, that. Pick something, some kind of direction, and just go with it for a while. As you change, as you practice and play, you may change direction a lot. You might go, I'm really like into this bluesy kind of thing, and it's more kind of a rocky thing. Pretty soon you're over here, and you're like, I like Joe Satriani. And now, you know, and then all of a sudden you get into that, all of a sudden you go way over here, and you're like, I like this country chicken picking thing. Don't worry about that. Don't get your head locked in that about, you know, you have it set exactly what you're going to do. Get what you really feel comfortable with and start working on that, getting good at that. And don't worry, as you change, as you progress, you may change different styles, genres, all kinds of things as you become a better guitarist. You may not. You may really gravitate towards reggae or something, bro, and you just full head of steam, and that you might stay with that the whole rest of your life. You might not. You might swerve off into a little more jazzy kind of thing, or country jazzy kind of thing, or who knows, you know, you gospel, I'm not sure. You know, so don't worry so much about how that path might change, but just get your head focused in some direction and practicing that. And let yourself evolve and develop as you practice. That will come as you get better and as you practice more. And the other biggest concept to really address is that utilizing the tools that we've talked about in this series, the basic theoretical constructs and concepts, and some of the abstract theory concepts that we've talked about, and, you know, we talked about with passing tones and moving around inside of key and out of key and coming back in and resolve and all those things that we've discussed, to really practice utilizing them, improvisations and composing and things like that. And I would say probably the last thing that's going to be really important is just take your time. You know, get a metronome out and get it going slow and really practice on how you're playing it, how you're holding your pick, how you're holding your guitar, how you trying to get yourself feeling comfortable in how you're going to play those pieces, and working on how you are going to do them that's in a comfortable way for you, because that's going to develop as you get more comfortable with the guitar. So start out slow, play it slow, accurate, clear, perform it well and in time, and then build up speed slowly but surely. And work on that. Sometimes it's really good to practice things clean, you know, and before you start adding effects to them. And we talked about basic setup on an amp, just give a nice clean sound that you can add distortion to or all kinds of effects later once you've got it to where you're playing it well. Because it can be really hard. It's like I've got this lick that goes I've got this lick that I play, and it's kind of a bluesy, jazzy, kind of groovy, funky thing. But it's kind of like in the style of Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen or something. And it's this kind of groove kind of thing. And the lick goes like this. It goes like... It goes something like that. I know you couldn't see the whole lick. Now, playing that clean is very easy. I can roll with my sweep picking and stuff like that, and it comes out sounding really good. And I can play it really fast. But when I try to put on distortion and play it like, you know, it's kind of a rocky, groovy, kind of not leaning towards heavy metal, but not exactly, kind of maybe along the lines of Van Halen or Joe Satriani a little bit. But when I turn on the distortion, the clarity gets lost. Those notes can get really muddied and muddled in that. So you know, once I've got it down to where I could play it clean and it was accurate and clear, and I built up my speed slowly but surely, then I had to deal with the other level. Whatever effects I was planning on using while performing that or recording it, then I had to practice it again with those effects on it so that it came out clear and performed well and wasn't a muddy mess with the distortion on it. Because the first time I played it with distortion, it sounded like a mess. It was like, you know, I mean, the whole riff goes something like, I mean, it's pretty quick. And it's like, and when I put the distortion on it, it sounded like a mess. And so I was like, I had to sit and practice it slowly and slowly and slowly, getting my palm muting just right so that when I was sweep picking and when I wasn't sweep picking, when I was alternate picking back and forth and changing back and forth between those two techniques, that it came out sounding good and it came out sounding clear, accurate, well performed, and in time. And so it's a matter of just really taking your time and building up speed and really paying attention to how you're performing it and performing it well. Performing it well and clear slowly at a certain tempo until it's good and clear and you're really happy with it. Then speed it up some and just work on it little by little until you can build it up to the speed that you really want to be playing it at. And as far as how you're doing that, you know, how you sweep pick, how exactly you hold the guitar, how exactly you hold the pick, and all those things, that will come as you get more and more comfortable doing it. You'll find you'll sit in there moving the guitar down a little bit like this, a little bit like that, a little bit like that, holding your pick a little bit differently. You know, I mean, I've done that a lot, and it's like, you know, and it's another reason for practice, because if you don't keep in practice, that you may lose some of that, or you have to, you know, get riding a bicycle a little bit before you start getting back in the swing of it. So keeping up on your practice is real important. And that's about basically, without getting it too in deep, is just to get practicing whatever you're going to be doing. Get focused on something. Like if you just say, well, I kind of like the blues right now, and I'd like to get into this kind of R&B blues kind of thing, and figure out some music that you like and start learning those songs. Or if you want to compose, then start composing in that. So figure out what's going on. We talked about breaking down a song to understand some of the basics and start working at that. And improvising, finding some backing tracks, using some of the tools we talked about to create your own backing tracks, to experiment around in that genre and get practicing what you're going to be learning. And don't worry about that may change. And because you might start looking around and all of a sudden you thought you were this blues R&B thing, and all of a sudden you start investigating it, and pretty soon you're like, no, now I'm leading a little bit more like this. I kind of like that. I heard this guitarist doing this now. That is so cool. You know, so off you go there. Don't worry about it. Go with it. Don't question it too much. Just go with it. Does that make sense? And just roll with it. If you start to steer off the other direction and that is so cool, so I'm going with that, go with it, bro. If that may change later on, it's like all of a sudden you hear, you know, Javon Guthrie or something, you know, who knows? And all of a sudden, whoa, bro, nope, I'm going that way. That is so cool. I heard him play this thing, you know, and off you go. And all of a sudden you are working on a whole different type of style and technique, and will develop as you go along. More than likely in the end that you will not sound exactly like any of them that you start trying to emulate, if that's what you start trying to do. Some people immediately jump in and just start composing and they skip that whole emulation process. Sometimes they don't. But the biggest thing is just get practicing, get improvising. Take your time, do it well, perform it well, build up speed on it until you're happy with it. And when you have questions about it, post it somewhere. Say, dude, does this sound good? I want some honest feedback. Don't lie to me, bro. You know, tell me, does it sound good or does it sound like crap, or what do I need to work on? You know, and be real, you know, conscious about when you're getting good feedback and when you're not getting good feedback. You know, and ask, you know, several people about what's going on. Find some guitarists that you look up to really try to get some feedback about how you're performing, because most of it's going to be you practicing anyway. And the biggest thing about practice is to just get practicing. You pick up the guitar and get practicing. Get some direction, some focus, and start working on that. Does that make sense? And just get flying, bro. Just straight up, just get flying and get doing it. So at this point in the series, this is the guitar lesson 21. I think that's very pertinent at this point, because if you understand quite well what I've talked to you about so far in the series, at this point you really should be ready to start practicing. And as you practice, any further development in theory and things like that we'll talk more about, but that will just kind of come along as you practice and as you run into things. But you should be able to relate most things that you run into back to most of the basic concepts that we've talked about up to this point, and to be able to dissect them and understand them and utilize them in your own productions and your own improvisations and whatever you're doing. So basically, that's about what I wanted to say about practice, so that you can understand some of the basic concepts that I think you need to work on. I know that I do have a practice schedule that I go through, that I spend an hour each day going through practice. I spend half of an hour doing different types of picking runs, different types, and then that's 10 minutes of that, and then I spend 10 minutes doing different types of legato types of runs that are, as little picking as possible. And then I spend 10 minutes doing tapping kind of runs, and I'm actually doing finger taps, moving around the fretboard. And then the other half of that practice is doing, one day a week is articulations that I know, and the other day of the week is different types of my favorite licks and runs, my library of licks and runs that I keep up on. And that's 2 days a week. And the other 3 days a week is, the first half of that is, the other 3 days a week is just improvising, just picking up the guitar for an hour at least and just practicing improvising, just warming up a little bit, and then practicing improvising and moving around the fretboard, getting comfortable with my style, how I'm doing things, experiment with things, and, and trying to have fun and, work on, my abilities. So that takes care of normally 5 days a week. You got those 2 days that I talked about, and then you got 3 days of improvising, at least an hour a day. And all other practice is directly going into learning to some other people's kind of music, if that's what I'm into at the time, composing and actually writing and working on my ability to play what I'm composing, and improvisations, things that I'm working on, I want to write, progressions, that I like, that I want to create leads on top of, or improvisations on top of, and working on creating those and improvising above them, to work on things that are helping me to better myself as a guitarist. At this point, I'm mostly into composition, so I'll practice those. Most of the time it comes to writing my compositions and then practicing them until I'm able to play them. Sometimes I'm able to play the things I write, sometimes I'm not, and it takes practice before I'm able to play them. I might practice quite a while before I've created this lick and this run that I've written that I'm not able to perform, and that spends a lot of time trying to be able to perform them. And so those are the things I'd focus on at any other time. So, and as far as warm up and things like that, those basic concepts, the things that you use, you have picking and legato and hammer-ons and taps and things like that. The basic things that you do as far as articulations, that most of the time I will warm up very slowly, pressing very hard and doing what I do very slowly in time, and really work on flexing my muscles in my hand and on both of them, in my form, how I hold the pick, and really taking my time and doing it slow. And I'll do that for about 10 minutes, and you'd be surprised, set the guitar down for a few minutes after that, and then you go into practice, how strong your hand feels. And if you do that with your practices also, and mix it up a little bit between playing it really slow and hard and really pressing down on there and just flying around, but you'll eventually, those two things will come together to where you've got this speed and this strength that you can really move around inside of your improvisations, compositions, or songs that you are learning how to play with strength and speed. Performed well. So basically that's what I think you should be focusing on for your practice. And it's I address some topics, but it comes down to mostly just you choosing some direction that you're focused on. And for now, just take off and start practicing that. And it may change and wander all over the place. Don't worry about that. Be focused on what you think you want to be doing right now and just get doing it. So peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I certainly hope you enjoy your practice and that you get busy becoming the great musician, guitarist you wanted to be. Peace, hope, love. See you in the next video.